All right, let's go ahead and get started then. A few more people waiting. Hello, welcome, welcome. All right, let's just go ahead and get started, right? Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this event and this little circle that we put on every month, every second Wednesday of the month. And just before we kick off, I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Nadia Hassan, and I am the founder and the CEO of Zaya, which is a digital health platform that's working to increase accessibility to people getting access to trustworthy, evidence-informed, holistic, and integrative care. And so one of the ways that I'm doing this is by putting on events every month where I invite different health experts to come and speak on different topics. And the past 2 months, or this is the second event actually, the second one with Rik. We just started the meditation and mindfulness circles where we come together, just a really small intimate group, which is a little bit different than the live events that we put on, where you can just meet others and really dive deep into topics around being mindful and cultivating awareness in your life and how to kind of integrate that into your everyday life. And so with today's circle, the topic that we'll be covering is managing chronic pain and anxiety using a mindful somatic approach. And so this is a topic personally that I really wanted to cover with Rik, because it's something that I've dealt with a lot in my life with my chronic illness. And so I hope that all of you are able to kind of get something from this as well today. So again, like I said, type in the chat, let us know who you are. And if you do have an intention, if you have any questions at all throughout this circle, please feel free to use the chat. This is really an open dialogue. It's a really great way for you to get any questions answered. And yeah, just feel free to use this as a really great opportunity to meet others. So I would love to introduce Rik. So Rik is our guide for tonight or this morning or wherever you are in the world. And I'm so happy to introduce Rik. About Rik, so Rik is the co-founder of the Mindfuless Care Center, where he's developed workshops and around mindfulness, somatic experiencing, spiritual wholeness, and the resilience of our human embodied experience. He's a mindful meditation teacher and has served as a Buddhist interfaith chaplain at San Francisco General Hospital and CPMC hospitals. In his mindful somatic practice, he helps clients with high levels of traumatic anxiety, PTSD, as well as grief support. And so Rik, I'd love for you to just dive right in and yeah, let's just get the topic rolling, because I think this is going to be a really interesting one, at least for me it is, because I resonate with it so deeply.
Great. Well, thank you, Nadia. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second mindfulness and meditation circle. That I'm really appreciative that we've gotten started here, and we'll see how it goes. And an opportunity. It's like I listen to all these things Nadia says about me. It's like I'm just practicing being human, like all of you, you know. And so, and when I say that, it's like it says managing. It's like I don't have the ultimate answer here today. That's not what I give. What I hope to do is start a beginning conversation here together, and one within ourselves, of creating a toolbox, a toolkit of various ways we can work with when we have these stresses and anxieties that come up. We're dealing, with chronic pain, and all that comes up is because we have a human body. We're an organism. And the organism is affected by things, as they're finding out in history. They say 4 generations back. And there's many people that thought, well, it goes farther back than that, because there's all these chromosomes, DNA, things that have happened before us, being in a womb. if our parents were stressed and adrenaline and cortisol are affecting them in generation after generation, of course, that's something we begin. So we're beginning with that already. So what I hope to do is when we take the word manage, that we don't look at manage as an ultimate place as a thing. Thank goodness someone's talking about this. Rik's going to give me the answer to resolve everything so I can ultimately not feel anything in life. I wish I could do that. But what I could do is, if we look at it, managing is we're readjusting. So to manage something is to readjust it, to maneuver. And I think back at times when I was a restaurant manager, you know, and you have everybody working in there, front of the house, back of the house, people coming in. And it was a constant readjusting and managing to try and ease, to make stress levels come down, the body to be able to soften. So you have to keep looking, and that's what our toolkit is for us. And I hope that today I can offer a few things that maybe might make sense. If they don't, you can throw it away, that you could be putting in your toolkit and that you can build on and work on from there and see where it might go. So part of it, so we're not controlling. Managing is nothing to do with controlling. It's working with the conditions that are here. The nature of conditions are also that they change. And so we can look at mindfulness as a verb, an openness, a willingness to be curious, to see what's going on and to actually acknowledge what's going on. It's really hard to work with pain and stress and anxiety if I don't even want to acknowledge it. And all I do is say, I don't want to acknowledge this. I'm going to just usually stay angry. Who can I find myself to be angry with? You know, I can be angry with my parents. I can be angry with my siblings, myself, my idea of God, you know, the medical system, the corner grocery store. Someone has to be responsible for why I'm feeling the way that I am. And part of that is the key aspect that I found that has helped me is a sense of kindness and compassion for being human being. It's actually one of the first things we should all be putting in our toolkit right now, our toolbox right now. The ability to learn what kindness and compassion means, because sometimes it's very difficult. And if I have pain, if I'm angry at the pain, all that's going to do is stiffen me up more. And I say that, and I've learned that because many years ago, I was born slightly with scoliosis, and I crashed hang gliding, and I compressed my spine. It was the worst pain I was ever in. And in healing that journey, it was like it built in more of my meditation practice, my looking at my spiritual wholeness, is looking at all these different ways within healing. And healing, if we look at it, it's not this is right, that's right, this is wrong, that we have all these things. We have a medical community, x-rays, ultrasounds, things that we can look at. Just had one of those the other day. And so those are part of the journey. We can look at plant-based things that can help us feel better, looking at foods, and all that is derived where we've actually been able to create medicines from. The thing is, do we get caught and then we forget that there's the wholeness of the whole body, the energy of the whole body. I'm a person who likes acupuncture. I was a director of a healing arts school. So body work, understanding massage, and then how we hold the stress and trauma in the body, and even being afraid of our tears. And that's when I say kindness and compassion is like when I sit with something that's hurting, can I meet it with that softness, a gentleness of a kindness that is like, wow, this is difficult. And that tearing that I allow, the grieving that I'm going through actually is a physiological discharge to help bring the adrenaline, the cortisol down, all these stress levels down, which actually ultimately help my back feel better. They all lead to that. So it's what we want to do is each one of us are uniquely individual. So we want to take all these different things we're putting in our toolkit in these different ways and deal with it. And the first part of, I would say, of meditation and mindfulness that has been so helpful for me is it slows me down. And in slowing down, I'm not running away my mind, this, that, looking for this way or that way. And so I look at the idea of like, we can relate to some, boy, I'm feeling a lot of stress or anxiety. And I notice when I get that quote, anxiety is a feeling tone. There's the word anxiety, and I go, well, what is anxiety? And it's all these thought bubbles that it's like, oh, fix this, do this, that should be this way, that should be. And it's like, I've got to get all this done and I got to figure all this out. And it's like, all of a sudden there's 15, 20 thought bubbles around me. And I go, wait a minute, I can't fix all those thought bubbles, but I can feel my body where I'm at. And that awareness is a huge shift for me. To then I can come in and I can feel the breath of the body, whether it's short, medium, holding. I can feel the weight of my body, the pressure of my body right here. An example is I find shopping isn't that much fun for me. And as I've gotten older, it's less fun. And I remember being in the store a couple of times, like looking, and then all of a sudden I was getting a little sweaty and shaky. By knowing that sweaty and shaky and not blaming it, I knew go out the door or find a place to just sit down, close my eyes and breathe. And it brings it down every time for me. It brings it down because I can feel my body, I can feel my breath, feel my toes. And it's not thinking about feeling my toes, it's knowing the system of the body, that there's tingling, softness, holding, constriction, openness, fluffiness, flowing, some sort of energetic awareness. And that can start bringing us, it's a help to start bringing my mind from running to Mars. So when we're talking about anxiety, stresses, let's just be here. Then I can recognize, oh, this is what's happening in my shoulders or a tight chest. The back is aching up again. And then what does it need? And that's the compassion. You know, it needs me to say, I'm here. I'm acknowledging you. And when I say I'm acknowledging my back, what ultimately we need to understand is we're acknowledging ourselves, that there's something hurting, this painful, confusing. And if I can't acknowledge myself, why would anyone else be able to acknowledge me if I'm not acknowledging myself and I'm angry and confused? And I remember one of the programs I was working with, there was a woman and she had back issues and there was so much anger and we kept talking, you know, and her trying to understand kindness and compassion, and it started getting through. And then we did a little bit of individual work. And it's not that ultimately some of the back stuff went away, but her body wasn't so constricted around the pain, at war with it, at hating it, because what we're hating is part of ourself. And it's like, I need to send it some love. And I need to see what can I do to care for it? What are the ways? You know, getting x-rays, getting checked, getting, you know, massage, acupuncture, you know, looking at herbs, all these different ways that we can begin to work, you know, on mindfulness to open ourselves into a more caring, supportive way for what's happening. And that begins a process. And when I can slow down, which is why when I can see my thought bubbles, oh, there's the anxiety, there's the stress, you know, it's based on trying to make the world perfect. And often, if we're living on high stress, we're actually living on a high level of activation, which can often come from childhood, can come from, you know, things that happen in family. It can be psychological abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, can be an illness. It can be things that happen at school, how we were treated. And so we become on this high level of activation, always looking for this perfect way out. And so it's really hard to see the true world when I'm highly activated and we feel we're being defensive. And something that I brought to people dealing around stress and anxiety, if it's coming from a high activated space, that it's like, I'm actually already offended because the world's not giving me what I want. No one's meeting me. No one's listening to me. And the most important person is me to listen to me. And when I can start doing that, we notice we sometimes soothe ourselves. We start going like this. Our heart starts to open up. Tears start to come out because that's the discharge, heating and shaking, which is the part of the stress and the trauma that the body has never had an ability to let out. And when we can watch it from the pause and the observer, it's very different from the story and the narrative. And so in somatic experiencing and trauma work, we understand you use narrative, but you use it to pause to get to other parts that are going on. As Peter Levine says, it's incompleted fight or flight responses. So a little thing about somatic experiencing, Peter Levine's work, if people are familiar with it, I found it life altering and goes so well with the mindfulness because I'm watching what's going on. And in order to pause and watch what's going on, there's two things that I'm meeting. I'm meeting the perils of where I'm at and everything that I'm dealing with. And I'm also meeting possibility. The peril and the possibility because I'm willing to slow down and say, what's happening here? Let me meet it with my heart. Let me meet it with just pausing, listen with it through my mind. And so when we say the mind and the brain, so there's this conscious mind, but if you talk to a neurosurgeon, the brain is the whole body. It's like I look at, here's the junction box, but it's feeding us information. If I don't want to deal with how the body's feeling, I'm cutting out information. So now I'm living in aversion and I'm not acknowledging myself. So mindfulness is bringing us to that point that I can sense what's going on. And I can sometimes see, I've noticed, okay, Rik, your lower back is really hurting. And if I bring a little awareness to it, I see the edges where it's not. And then I notice other parts of my body where it's not hurting. And it's like, oh, I can breathe with those parts. So it's by not being afraid to kind of move in to sense, is it round, is it flat? And then I can begin to see where it's not. I had one client I worked with, she was in so much pain of things that went on. She goes, I would find my earlobe and start there because that was neutral. There wasn't anything happening there. And so we can begin to see there's something more also happening besides our pain, but it comes by acknowledging it in our humanness and having compassion for what we're going through and something that's happened to us. And so that for me has been huge work through my own physical. My back can act up on me when I do things. It's nowhere near where it was at first. And then I grew up with a family of illness. So when we're talking about the stress and illness, that I was like learning about that, watching two parents with cancer. One of them died when I was a teenager. And so we're holding this. So when we say perils and possibility, it's meeting life to see it as it is, not the way that I wish it would be that it never meets. So it's a wake-up call. There's nothing wrong with beautiful ideas and desires, and we should all cultivate them in our life. We should cultivate these things to have less suffering in our world, to stop hurting each other and stop hurting ourselves. But in order to do that, we have to start with ourselves. I have to stop hurting myself and look on where I can even gain support. When we say I'm going to do it all myself, that no, there's others that can help us and they give us the tools so we can do it ourselves. And so it's like holding the sorrows, the joys, the pains, and the pleasure all in one, which ultimately what we're doing is we say we're opening our mind. When I can do that, I can open my mind and my heart. But physiologically, what we're doing is we're stretching our nervous system. We're allowing our nervous system to hold these two places all at once and not be overwhelmed. And so that means when I hold it and I hold the difficulties of what I'm going through or another person, there's nothing wrong if I tear up. There's nothing wrong if I heat up. That's my body in relationship to another. It's not them causing that to me. It's my ability to want to resonate and open up my mind and awareness, and that I can hold the heart that cares so much for another person. and let it do its energetic movement. And sometimes it's a shaking, a discharge, it's a light moisture. I found this working as a hospital chaplain. Can't even tell the stories and things that have happened there. And it kept expanding, expanding. So we learn how to sit with all these things. So I'll just take a pause for there. It's like I've been going through a lot, and I want to do a meditation. I want to add some things in here, but it's like looking at stress and trauma. It's a response. It's a specifically defensive bodily reaction that we can have, and that we additionally want to mobilize. But when we've had something happen to us where we couldn't mobilize into fight or flight, then it gets stuck. It can go into a freeze state. And then we create belief systems around the freeze state. And so now we're continuously activating the freeze state through a belief system that started from the trauma never actually getting to discharge, which is what Peter Levine began to recognize. How animals who live in a world, eat or be eaten, they actually pant, they heat up, and they shake. And that's the same thing that we need to do. And we've lived in a culture that I have found often thinks there's something wrong with that. And, you know, as a male, you don't cry. And the work that I do now, I have such a sadness of how many women I have found. It's like, no, we don't cry. We don't do that. And that could have come from, well, if I cried, it would make the situation worse. I'm not giving mom and dad or my siblings that power, or my roommate, but yet our system wanted to shake and cry and heat up to feel better because of what was happening. So we start creating a whole belief system. And you know what happens when a family, a culture here starts creating this belief system? That's our world. And now we're all living in it. And so what we're doing is we're trying to change that. So we don't have to live so helpless, but we can actually sit in what's actually happening and say that is a bodily thing that's looking at. So Peter Levine writes from Memory, Trauma, and Healing. He goes, trauma is fundamentally a highly activated, incomplete biological response to threat, frozen in time. For example, when our full neuromuscular and metabolic machinery prepares us to fight or to flee, muscles throughout the entire body are tensed in specific patterns of high energy readiness. When we are unable to complete the appropriate actions and discharge, that's the fight or flight to help myself keep safe. The tremendous energy generated by these survival preparations, this energy becomes fixated into specific patterns of neuromuscular readiness. Afferent feedback to the brainstem generated from these incomplete neuromuscular autonomic responses maintains a state of acute and then chronic arousal, that high state of what's going to hurt me next. And when I'm in that, we can't see clearly, which is why often we feel no one's hearing me, no one's seeing me. I'm already on guard when I go into the corner grocery store. That's what I'm saying. We're already offended because it's physiological. It's not you. It's the physiology of the body that never had completion. And so Peter writes, we're in this chronic high arousal, and he says, traumatized people are not suffering from a disease in the normal sense of the word. They become fixated in an aroused state. So what we're doing is we're working to break that pattern that paused the aroused state, which is when something was happening, the fear, shaking, crying that I wanted to do. We have to go back gently, guide ourselves, or use someone that understands trauma to guide and feel those same things we didn't want to feel when it was happening, the shaking, the heating. And so it's like you can pause the narrative out. And a great example of this is I had a couple come to me. They were doing lots of work. They were actually chiropractors, using all these different ways. They came through someone who is a mindfulness psychologist, and he knew of my work. And so he asked them to come see me. They had to crash land a plane. and they were suffering. There was some pain they were holding, their whole body, you know, sometimes constriction, and something that I didn't even know before we started. He couldn't even write his name clearly, is how it so was affecting him. So in a session of working with them, of slowing down the actual experience that they had. So we walked through what was happening to them up in the air, the fear, the body, trying to maneuver the plane, everything they were going through, and working back and forth with the two of them. And what was coming out was some shaking, they were heating, there was some tearing. And then we worked it all the way out to where they were able to get the plane down. And then we were able to go back and maybe reframe it. What if one little thing had changed in the plane where the engine didn't go out? And notice what that would feel like if the engine never went out. So we use the narrative, which the mind will keep going because it wants to fix it. What happened in childhood? You know, I don't know about any of you. It's like, okay, you know, if I go over this story one more time with my siblings and my parents, I think it'll be different this 5,384th time. It won't be. What it needs is compassion for the experience that I went through. There's the compassion for the experience that we went through. And so when I was working with this couple and we were done, and here's the thing that I didn't know, and they felt more relaxed and more present. He writes me a check and he goes, oh my gosh, my handwriting is clear and you can read it.
So Rik,
yes.
I had a question for you. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
so,
no, please.
Yeah, no. So are you kind of saying that a lot of our trauma or a lot of our pain is connected to trauma? And if we're to address that trauma, that can help us not just relieve the pain that we're experiencing, but it can also affect us in many other areas in our life, like you're saying, handwriting or something, you know?
Yeah, well, if you think, yes, because then it's like, I mean, I just felt, God, I've had these wonderful people I've met in life to help me learn that and understand it, and then taking my own practice and then working in classes, that we find if we're upsetting the neurological system of adrenaline and cortisol, that's affecting our belly. That's why a lot of irritable bowel syndromes and things like that, when you look back, you can see there's unresolved trauma states. And that's what Peter Levine began, and all these people, and Bessel van der Kolk and Stephen Porges with the vagus nerve, and beginning to understand, you know, trauma therapists who have a clinical background, and all this is starting to get weaved together. You know, we probably heard for many years the psychosomatic. There's what's happening in the mind and the body. And Peter Levine saying something happened in the body. By using mindfulness, our mind, to watch and deal with it, we can actually see where symptoms and syndromes arrive. And because if I'm feeling something, and all of a sudden, if I keep creating that energy, there's the irritable, so we can say, here's the irritable bowel. But when we work with it, it can sometimes start to relieve itself. Now, something will be to the point where it's more actually there. I might not be able to get rid of it, but the earlier you can catch something, you might be able to get rid of it, you know, and move it. And a beautiful example was Peter Levine was working with a Gulf War vet, and he had come back, and everyone was saying, it looks like he has Tourette's syndrome. You know, he's starting feeling horrible. And they were saying no one could figure out psychologically or emotionally. Well, Peter started working with him. And you go back to the narrative, he watched his friends die, and he was in a Jeep that blew up. Peter slowed down the process of his body being thrown into the air and stopped it and they work through each little piece. So he started working through the pieces of what physiologically happened to this man. And after a few sessions, all these things that everyone said he had started to go away. And it's amazing. So I'm not going to say just do this work, but we're starting to understand there's a neurophysiological body. The brain is this whole body. and things that happen to us and how it gets held. It's like when we laugh, it was like, I forget who was it years ago, laughter is the best medicine. And yeah, and actually things can start to relieve themselves in a certain way, but then we have to keep working on it. We have to keep opening the heart. So no matter what level it is, you know, when I have a certain gut issue that might come up and it's very painful, it's not that I'm there to hang with it. I get a sense of it. I notice where it's not in my body. And then if I'm feeling overstressed or tense, sometimes maybe I turn away. I'll listen to something, you know, that grabs my interest, because that's also another way. It's when it's a lot, there's nothing wrong with taking a break. But if I totally avoid what's going on, I may be living in a story where I'm not actually looking for the proper help, because I'm living in aversion. When we live in aversion, we're always going to find somebody or something to be upset about, instead of being compassionate for our human journey. So this is what Peter was finding out, and all these things, how these syndromes and symptoms can be a cause of, you know, of having back issues. When I did the training, we worked, you know, we worked with my back and the fall, the crash of the hang glide. And ultimately what I got to when I worked on it, the real grief was I never felt anybody was there for me and my family. I was always there for others. And when that grief started coming out, some of the pain started lessening in my back. And I remember going to my chiropractor, and he goes, that was one of the easiest adjustments we ever had, because something was letting go. And it was part of my mind was letting go. And the mind, thought, the brain, and our emotions, it's all connected. It's not, I don't separate these things. They're all part of the same thing that we're working with. So it's Bessel Van, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just asking if anybody that's here listening, if there's anything specific with, maybe if you are experiencing pain yourself, I would love for you to, if you're open to it, just putting it in the chat, or also, again, just like turning your mic on and your video on and just sharing your experience. And like I said, this is a great way to, if you do have any questions, Rik is here to help you. And yeah, so just letting you know that's an option. So go ahead.
Yeah, please do that. You know, I'm hope this is, you know, we have such a limited amount of time, and I'm trying to get out as much. I enjoy talking and sharing these things because I'm also learning and practicing myself. A couple of things that Bessel van der Kolk, so put in your question, I want to share. He says, if we can help our patients tolerate their own bodily sensations, they'll be able to process the trauma themselves, which is what we're trying to do. But when something's traumatic, we stay away from the body. We can become very intellectual. And that means now I'm intellectualizing, I'm not feeling, I'm leaving out my heart, my emotions, my whole spirit to heal. So, you know, if anyone, you know, please, if, you know, making sense, another way I can share to help make more sense of what I'm saying. I'm hoping it's helpful, you know, in this limited amount of time, and I want to get a meditation and also.
I think there was something that I wanted to speak on, or just ask you a question about, and that is in the moment when we start to feel the pain come up. I think that can trigger a lot of anxiety in people. And I'll speak from my own personal experience. When I was having chronic pain, there's a moment when you become so aware of your body, where you can start to feel it right when the pain starts to enter into the body. And then you start to enter into this sort of vicious cycle of anxiety, and then the anxiety increases the pain, and then in order to get out of the pain, you have to almost come back into being in a state of not having anxiety, almost being in this sort of relaxed state, which could help you kind of come back out of it. But I think that's something that can be really difficult at times is one, catching the anxiety when you can and not entering into this sort of vicious cycle. I know we have a few questions also, so maybe we can just
Yeah, if I can answer that a little bit. So the thing is, there's the acknowledgement. So it's like I'm acknowledging this, and it amazes me how many people that haven't been acknowledging something, when they do, that actually there's some chemical release that is like, thank you, I'm being acknowledged. It's like my stomach's killing me. And it's like, what's wrong with you? Why is this happening to me? You know, it's like, I look at all these other people, their stomach isn't killing them. And then we make that up because we don't know how many people are hurting or what's going on with them. But we can only feel ourselves. But the fact that I know I feel myself in this body, others are going through the same thing. And so when there's that acknowledgement, it brings it down from the anxiety to the body. And then can I have some compassion for what I'm feeling? And that again, when I can bring the compassion in, it sometimes lets the heat and the shaking start coming out and the tears coming out. And then if I just watch that, I notice my breath changes. Where you were talking about the song, because I'm starting to be aware of what's actually happening. And then I can actually be aware of the pain. Oh, it's a pushing, it's a pulling. So when I say stress or anxiety, I can actually see, oh, it's a sharpness. And I can play with it through image, through different ways that we can work with it. You know, we can say it's like if there's a pain in my body, when I realize where it's not pain, it's like with my back, I say, oh, everybody else is here. You're not alone, upper back. And all of a sudden, oh, there's arms. And I bring my awareness to the feeling tone and down to my feet and my butt where I'm sitting and my feet on the earth. And so now I'm using mind energy, the energy, which is also going into the pain, but I'm expanding it out to more of the body and feeling where it's supported. The earth is here. Mother Earth is here. I have legs and feet. And all of a sudden, my mind's not 100% on the pain. It's become aware of the rest of the body. And when it does that, it's like I say to the pain, if you want to, everybody's here. And it starts to release. Sometimes it'll release. I'm not saying every time. That's why we're building the toolkit. But I won't know if that works if I don't do it. If I don't practice bringing awareness to noticing where the pain is, flat, round, but then expanding it out to other parts of the body that are also, I have a whole body helping each other. It isn't, you know, it's like everybody's here to help my back. Everybody's here to help my stomach. Oh, head, migraine, everybody's here. But the migraine can often be caught because it's uncompleted trauma. I'm looking, I'm stuck, I'm what's wrong. And so what am I doing? Boy, that energy is going to get tighter and tighter. And so when we work with it from compassion, saying, wow, this is what I'm feeling in my head, I need to have some kindness for that. And then if I can recognize more of my body is here, it can move it and discharge it. And I remember a patient saying, wow, I never knew I could do that. And start hearing myself and know everybody's here. And all of a sudden they realized they've been so inside themselves with all their trauma and pain. As they realized everybody's here, they expanded it to more of the outer world. Oh, there's other people here too, not just me. There's people helping me. I can hear other people that are suffering. Because sometimes our own suffering, we lose the fact that all human beings have a body of suffering and pain and emotions. And when we can utilize that and we realize, oh, there's more and Mother Earth is here, I can sometimes see the sky when I'm stressed and anxiety. All of a sudden, like, wait a minute, I'm right here. There's rain on my body, a nice cool breeze or warmth. There's flowers, there's trees in front of me. So it's an expansion that everything's here, but I have to start with myself. So some questions.
Yeah, we have, there was one question where someone, they said that they have been seeking help for post-trauma. They're a cancer survivor for 5 years and might have recidive cancer coming back. And they're not sure that doctors are understanding or anyone is. And so they're experiencing a lot of anger and irritation. Yeah, I think that, could you speak on some of these techniques of using mindfulness to help with a lot of that frustration that comes up because, and also I think, again, it's almost like the cycle that I was talking about when when you have stress and when you have anxiety, it can affect the body, it can impact the body. And so how can you kind of bring yourself back into being mindful and aware and present when you start to experience these sort of emotions like anger?
Yeah, so yeah, thank you for the question, and my heart for what you're going through. Is one, when we have an illness or we have a cancer, what I recognize, part of it, it's affecting our survival. So it's like, am I going to make it or not? So all of a sudden, I'm a practitioner, I'm a Buddhist practitioner. We look at death and practice with it. But when it becomes real, sometimes there's another, it's like all of a sudden we get closer to it. It's like I can think, yeah, I know, I won't be here. So now there's something going on and it can be confusing, and we can control it. It's somewhere in my body. What do we do? It's not like I can set it down. I can not hold this anymore and let it go. So it takes the mind a little bit of time to begin to work with that. So we give it space, and in that space there can be the confusion, there can be the grieving of the confusion, the not understanding. And so we start working with that. And as you're saying, when we start doing it with kindness and saying, what can I do? That starts to bring the cortisol and adrenaline down and softening. So now we're not adding to the stressors of the body. We're doing the best that we can. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I do want to make sure that I'm here and not adding to it. And so we know life is difficult. That's part of the wake-up call. We think, often we've lived our lives thinking, oh, nothing should happen to us. Well, that's discounting what we are. We're an organism that feels things, is connected to things. A virus can get into our community, and all of a sudden, like coronavirus, it's all over the world. We can be affected by these things. So how do we meet it? With compassion, finding the different ways to work with it. We're at a point where, wow, we had a vaccine. We can find and work with that. And so we're working with our practitioners on all the levels. And so that's why it's so important. The medical doctor, they're doing their training. They're saying they're giving us some of this information. And I say this now because I'm going through some of that. Not only through my back, all of a sudden I'm having some medical conditions I didn't even know. And so I'm a one that I look at all these healing practices. They're not, this is right, that's wrong, this is right, that's wrong. I'm trying to use all of it. I want to use the information that I'm getting and from tests. And then I want to say, okay, I want to work with that in a gentle, kind way. I want to use my practitioners. I want to look at my diet. I want to try, am I getting my rest? And when I'm practicing those things of self-care, I'm not so overwhelmed by the condition, because there's something that I'm doing that's good and kind for myself. And that feels really good. And so that brings it down. So I hope. So that's just one aspect, to begin with. So,
yeah, we have a few more messages here, and then we have someone, Manan. I think you also have a question. I think you just answered their question, but
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm the person that is a cancer survivor. It's true, I've been dealing with a lot of not confidence in doctors anymore, because I don't know what to believe anymore. So that's what's causing my anger, I think, and my irritation. And as well, I've been doing a lot of self-care for that, but I'm still very angry at a lot of things. And so I'm not sure what to do anymore.
Well, thank you for that. Because the thing is, what we're doing when we don't understand, like, remember, a doctor is different practice. They're coming from what they know. And I remember I was working in the ICU as a chaplain. And I watched like this head doctor. I was like just amazed at some of the stuff he could do. And we don't always have time. One time we were sitting down with each other. You know, I'm not a doctor. I don't think that way. But he looked at me and he goes, I can't do what you do. I couldn't imagine, he said, doing what I do, to have to sit with someone and work with them, which is what I'm trying to do, is meet them wherever they're at, open that discussion, unfold it, not change it, but unpack it. So anger is like, what does your anger need? So there's something happening, confusion, maybe information I'm getting, you know, here's this doctor and that doctor. We can sometimes make all doctors the one or two doctors we don't like. My mind could be guilty of that. But if I realize that's not all doctors, and they're trying to teach doctors to understand more of what's going on. But the anger is, say, what does the anger need? The anger needs your kindness and compassion. The confusion of the anger of not getting information, that needs my compassion. So that starts the coming down. It's arriving from the narrative that's happening with the doctors. But if I can feel the tight chest, my shoulders coming up, the anger, the heat, is that, oh, that needs me. That needs me, because this is confusing. And I'm trying to find answers. So, and I'm not getting it from this one person, because sometimes there is no answer the one person's going to have. But when you start bringing the kindness in for the anger and separating that from them, because the anger could have other things and confusion, it can even have a history to it. And then I might be able to then reach out some of the other practitioners and see what's there. And so that's a way to work with softening. In an illness, we still don't know the outcome. And I say this with all my heart, because I live with a family of illness. I see some live longer. I saw my mother not. We don't know what it's going to be. Being human, the minute we're born, our death is going to be here. So why not be as caring and as compassionate as we can on the journey? And that means if I can do that, I can work with my grief, my sadness. I allow myself to hold it. And then I can stretch myself to look at others and how to meet what I'm feeling in the moment. And that's the beauty of compassion and kindness practices, is they're helping in what's needing now. Oh, anger, you need that. Grief, you need that. And that's a feeling, tone, and emotion I'm having. It has the narrative with the other, but I can't change the other, but I can sure give myself a big hug. And when I start doing that and softening, my mind opens up, and we might be able to then see some other alternatives. Then, you know what, I need to step away from this practitioner and step out over here. I need to ask that person what they're doing. I need to go what Nadia is setting up and her platform and her programs. Wow, I need to look at some of that. Or maybe I've been a person where I totally believed everything in just this one medical. I only believed in my, acupuncturist, and I won't believe anything else. Well, that gets stuck too. Or just my chiropractor, my nutritionist, and I avoid everything else to look at. So we're breaking that. We're breaking it open. And that's the beauty of what Nadia is doing. She's bringing us on a platform and looking at who these people are that are going to be on the platform. And then you try. They may not all match. Even I do work with people around this. And some people we really resonate. And every now and then I can meet someone, we're not a good match. And that's okay. I want you to find someone that helps you. So those are my short answers. I hope that's helpful in some little way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So either another quick question, or we get a meditation in, try to get that in.
Yeah, we can leave the last 5 minutes for meditation. So what about, is that okay with you, Rik? Is 5 minutes? I know it's pretty short.
I love more, but I'll work with what we have. You know me, I can go on forever.
We need to make these longer. So somebody else asked a question. Maybe we can answer 2 questions in one. Someone asked if there are other exercises that they can do when anxious besides meditation. And someone else also mentioned that breathing is difficult for them. They feel tightness in their shoulders and neck to breathe, and to breathe deeply is to feel tension throughout. So maybe what are some different exercises that people can use?
Yeah, so first, a lot of us, when we're feeling a lot of tension, trauma, I'm trying to breathe into my chest. I want to get it going. The lungs don't have muscles. So if I'm trying to breathe into my chest, that means I'm putting an action, I'm creating a movement of a muscle that's around the lungs, I'm tightening it. And so this actually comes from my singing, learning how to sing and working with my trauma work. I often have to work with clients of starting to breathe from the feet, imagining roots into Mother Earth. And we never breathe past the diaphragm, which is the muscle that actually allows the lungs to expand and contract. So we're actually doing physicalness with imagery of the mind. And so I start working with them, expanding and feeling the breath open up from around the pelvic area like a ball, and breathing out. And once we feel the breath starting to come up into here, you stop. The minute it gets to just a little bit underneath that and just above where the diaphragm is, you go back down. And so these are exercises to start breathing with Mother Earth and getting the tension down. It was amazing. Just one client started practicing with that, and she was starting to feel the difference. And she was actually able to use it in her swimming instead of getting anxious with her swimming. But we have to practice it. It's not say, oh, let me do it once and then it's on. No, we have to work with it over, because we're creating a new muscle. And part of the mind muscle is we're looking to do something differently than we've created. And so I may have a shorter breath at first, but it's now allowing this to untighten, to unwind itself, because now I'm just breathing from the lower half of the body, and I can imagine beautiful roots into Mother Earth, and oh, she's giving me all her nutriments, and I'm bringing it back down. So this is one thing to start by yourself, maybe working with somebody that does stuff like that. And so all this can then start bringing the shoulders down. Noticing what they feel like up, then I'll notice what they feel like when they start to come down. And there's many other pieces that are behind this, but a little piece. Sometimes if we're not feeling our body, go push against a wall. Imagine this is a wall, and I push with my hand and my feet and my toes, and I dance, and I push into the wall, and I get more embodied. I start feeling the muscle tissue. So I do this with clients and also with others. Stanley Rosenberg's book, Working with the Vagus Nerve. He's got some great exercises. I'm actually doing a few times a week. It's working with the vagus nerve and the cranial nerves, the muscle tissue, and re-engaging our social aspect. So it's like Stephen Porges's work of sight, seeing, smelling, hearing, taste, and touch. We're working, when we're in the trauma, we're trying to reactivate our social engagement. And if you ever notice, sometimes if you do start to feel better, you cry, and all of a sudden the world becomes clearer, your sound, that's because the vagus nerve opened, the ventral vagus nerve opened back up. We discharged. This hugely important piece, Stephen Porges' work on understanding somatic experiencing, trauma work. We're re-engaging our social system. This is all about boundaries. So now we're really down to, I had a long, beautiful meditation I wanted to do.
Oh, well, let's see. Why don't we, let's go for the meditation, and I guess whoever wants to stay on, if you have time, then.
Well, yeah, I don't have time for a long one. But let's just do a short one. So now just everything that I've been saying, say, okay, just let it fall. Imagine it falling. If even things resonate, okay, there's no work I have to do right now. And let your eyes even soften and close. See if you can find your feet or your legs. And when I say find that, it's the awareness of the higher brain function that's noticing sensation. So if you notice contact of the feet, the buttocks, the back, that contact is known through weight, through a pressure. That's a feeling tone. and say, oh, the floor, Mother Earth, you're holding me up. Chair, you're holding me up. If I'm laying down in bed, oh, you're here. And just let yourself like fall into that. Like, ah, it's right here holding me up. And then just notice the breath, this beautiful oxygen that we're actually breathing in. We're actually breathing in the space around us, the air around us is actually helping us survive. It's giving us this air that's coming in through the nose, inhaling and exhaling, the rising and falling of the belly and the chest on an inhalation and an exhalation. And just being aware of this body, wherever it's feeling connection, weight, pressure, and just breathing with that. And then we've talked about kindness and letting the breath move through the heart, this caring heart. And it's like, yeah, being human isn't easy. Of course, heart. Yeah, you're here. It's not easy. And the heart is this compassionate, kind place for us. The heart feeds the oxygen through all its blood and all the cells moving it. So it represents this goodness that's always in all of us. And when I'm confused and don't know why, I come to the heart. It's like, yeah, this isn't easy. Let me just start with the heart sending its beautiful warmth and breath, feeding the bones and the muscle tissue. I can send it to my thoughts. They need some kindness. And as you're sitting, I'm going to offer this last poem. It's a poem, I do write poetry. And just breathe with the poem. It's called It Can Be No Other Way. I looked up and asked why. What I received was a blue sky. Again, I looked up and asked why. This time clouds were received. Trying again, I looked up and asked why. Rain came pouring down on my face. What do? I asked why again. This time the sun blared its smile. I cried and wept and pounded my chest. Looking up, why? This time the clouds parted. A blazing night sky of stars, planets, and galaxies were lighting up the darkened night. A glorious wonder for the eyes to behold, swirling and dancing before my eyes. I then felt it inside my body. The energy began to shake. My feet moved and danced. I could feel this earth, my earth, underneath my feet. The voice opened and sang out, I am here, I am alive. I will cry, I will dance, I will sing. I would try my best to make a difference. While I experience the unknown, it can be no other way. It can be no other way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and as we end a meditation, still see if we can have the awareness of the body here and the breath. And then I can watch the thoughts and I can begin to see the pattern of my thoughts, which is the beautiful waking up. I begin to see the pattern. And when I can see the pattern, that offers me the possibility of change and transformation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that meditation and for, again, just sharing so much of your wisdom. I think this was really insightful as always. And also, I just really want to thank everybody here who's with us and for staying a little bit later. And also thank you for those of you who shared your experience. Just know that I acknowledged your chat. And if you do have any questions, you can always send those to Rik. I can put in his website in the chat.
And I can put in my email address too.
Yeah. And then also Rik has his book. So if you like his poetry, he also has a book called If You Can't Change Your Mood, Change Your Mind, Mindful Reflections Towards Self-Discovery. And so I can put a link in that there as well. And then also, this is a free gathering. So but if you do feel inclined to support Rik at any moment, you can do that here. The link is there at mindfulnesscare.wajuba.com. And then we also have, if you'd like to come to the next meditation and mindfulness circle, we'll be doing that again. It's on the second Wednesday of July. So that'll be July 14th, same time. And I can put another link to that here. You can register for that before it sells out again very quickly. And then I will also be interviewing another healthcare expert next month. She is a naturopath and herbalist. Her name is Janine Alonso, and we'll be talking about balancing hormones, stress, and gut health naturally. And so if you'd like to join that, you can go to the link there. And yes, that's basically it. Oh, and then finally, if you'd like to check out my projects and the work that I'm doing, you can do that. Website is zayamed.com. And then you can check out any upcoming events there. You can also see the platform that we're developing. We are launching in the UK, specifically in Bristol, and we'll be expanding into London later this year. So if you want to sign up and get on the wait list for that, you can do that there. All right, I think that's everything. Thank you so much, everyone. And take care.